Okay, I think it's 10 past. We're already 3 seconds late, and since I'm Swiss, I feel very uncomfortable if we're late, and so I apologize for being 3 seconds late. So you have all eaten, so your stomachs are full. It's good to do some body exercises because you know mind and body are something together. So can you please stand up? Yeah. And so this is a little bit an observation exercise for you to see whether or not you pay attention. So please extend your arms like that. Turn your hands around. Then make this, like that. Then turn around. Now you extend just your first fingers like that. Then you squeeze your nose like this. And now you just open. Come on, pay attention. Okay, so you can sit down again. If you're interested in how it really works and why it works with me and doesn't work with you, you can speak to me right after the presentation. So, okay, that was fun. So who am I? Yes, I'm from Switzerland, but I was actually born in Finland, and my roots are in St. Petersburg. So I have Russian influence, and if you go further, I'm actually Greek, and even further, probably African, so something like that. So, good. So my name is Ilari Henrik Aegerter. I'm the managing director of House of Tests. We're a testing consultancy, which means we bring in testers to projects and work there. I'm also the VP of marketing of the Association for Software Testing, which is a professional association for testers. And in my free time, I brew beer because I like beer. So, a couple of Kyiv observations. So, I came here on Tuesday, and so of course I walked around a little bit. So, one thing is really spectacular. So, notarius, right? It reads notarius. So, why do you have so many notarius? In every corner of the city there is a notarius. It's crazy. That was really something that struck my mind. Then second one, restaurants don't have urinals. I've noticed that. They do have it here in the Congress Center. And very funny to be in an Uber taxi and listen to the advertisements where it's probably some medicine, and then there needs to be a disclaimer at the end, and it's spoken in 10 times speed, which is fascinating to listen to. It's very funny. Cool. So, observations, of course, are an important element of every tester. So if you want to be a good tester, you need to be really good at observations. So the best teachers for observations are kids of about 5-6 years old. So if you walk with a kid and you need to go from A to B very fast, just forget it. It doesn't work because they notice all sorts of things and are really good at detecting things you haven't seen before. Good, so we're going to talk about context-driven and what context-driven testing is. This will be a little bit of a mixed bag. I changed all my slides yesterday, mostly because I wanted to have some exercises here as well and have a little bit of fun and see what's going on, but I will still introduce the whole thing. Now, have you ever asked, what does it mean to be world-class in testing? What makes a world-class tester? So there are certainly some elements like being very bright, having good capability of observation, analytical skills, being really good at abstractions, building models, designing tests, and also know something about software engineering. Now, one of the most beautiful definitions of what a tester is comes from Jerry Weinberg, which is a tester is a person who knows that things can be different. And isn't that just beautiful? It's as a tester, you're exposed to developers who think everything works, but you have the imagination that maybe it doesn't, maybe some things are different. And then you go on a hunt and try to find out if something is really different. So Jerry Weinberg, I can highly recommend him. He has written about 100 books and has written an excellent article in 1961 about the limitations of test automation. In 1961, I think they carved the bits in stone, and he still already made some thoughts about what the limits are on test automation. Good. Usually what we're exposed to, so let's say we have a web application, we look at it and we think, oh, looks good. But sometimes it's a good idea to be a little bit on the outside or look inside of what's going to happen. So I have a little exercise for you. So I have the originals here. So let's put them here. And they're also on the slide, you see there is a very elaborate filming mechanism, so it goes in there and then is projected on the slide and changes the color of the table as well. It's really, really advanced. So what do you see? Two cubes, yes. What could be the, I mean, are they plastic cubes? Are they, what could they be? So what's your estimation? Metal cubes. They look metallic, they're shiny, right? Okay, now we come to the interesting thing. So we have the specification, which is this one, and then we have the implementation, which is this one. So do you notice any difference? Okay, color, yeah. So so this one, the size, we could measure it. I don't have a measurement device, but what I did before, of course, because I come prepared, is I measured these two cubes, and they're exactly 1 inch per side. So it's a cubic inch of things. So they're identical in size, actually. But you can see there is a color hue difference. Any other differences? Different metals? So I heard something quite interesting over there. Yes, you said what? The weight. Okay. So now you have a hypothesis. So since we're all scientists in here, of course, what we do if we have a hypothesis, we want to test the hypothesis, and we do that through experiments. So that's the cool thing. As software testers, we are actually applied scientists, so it's pretty cool. Or if you want to be very fancy, you can call yourself an applied epistemologist. Sounds very, very educated. Maybe translate that into Latin and then Greek, and then it sounds even better. But you said something, okay, so there could be a weight difference. Now, you probably have a hypothesis. What's your hypothesis? Different material? Yeah, size is equal. Size is exactly the same. Let me turn it around a little bit, just like that. So they're the same size. From paper? No, it's not paper. But okay, so you said size. So what would be your expectation that there is a size, a weight difference, right? Different material. So what do you think the ratio could be, the weight ratio? 1 to 2? Not that different. So what would you say, 1 to 1.5? 1.1. Okay, can you come in front, please? So please give a warm welcome to Sergey. Yeah. Okay, good. So, okay.
Definitely not 10%.
Not 10%? So what happened when you lifted them up? What happened in your mind?
That I was wrong.
So that you were wrong, that's 1.1 is not the factor?
First of all, my guess was the guess of my colleague was correct. They are completely of different weight, and but the difference is quite huge.
Yes.
Because this one is very light, and this is heavy.
So one is very light and one is very heavy. So actually what they are, so these cubes, one is magnesium and the other one is tungsten. So recently I just made a kind of little research in the periodic table of elements, and I found an error of something that I believed for 45 years. So for 45 years, what I thought in the periodic table of elements, if you count up the numbers, it gets heavier and heavier. That's absolutely not true, apparently. So there is a weight difference, it's oscillating. Did you know that? Okay, some of you knew. I didn't. I walked the Earth for 45 years without knowing that there are fluctuations in the periodic table of elements. So the one on the right is tungsten, which is the heaviest element. It's a little bit heavier than gold, and it's the only one that's still affordable. There's osmium, and then there is one more, iridium, which is heavier, but they cost about $25,000 for such a cube. Yes, Swiss people have banks, but they're not mine, so I couldn't afford it. Then on the lighter side, of course, there's lithium, which is even lighter, but that is very reactive. Then there is even heavier materials in the transuranic elements, but for other reasons, it wasn't a good idea to bring them here. So actually, the one, what you see is that the specific weight there is a factor of almost 11. So it's this cube here is, and you can test it afterwards if you want. You can just come here. It's the sensation is spectacular because the light one is far lighter than you would expect, and the heavy one is heavy. You think it's a black hole in your hand. That's quite fascinating. So why do this exercise? So as a context-driven tester, you're a compulsive empiricist. That's what you should be as a tester, which means that you never believe anything. You always want to test it yourself. You really want to know. You never believe anything. You want to see that. Now that is very counterintuitive to your daily life, because you have the assumption that if you walk into that door, you will hammer your head against it and it's not transparent. That's your assumption. But it's not based in empiricism. So in daily life, if you wanted to be a compulsive empiricist, people would look really, really weird at you, because then you would constantly walk into doors to see maybe it's permeable right now. But it isn't. Whereas in testing, you need to develop that mindset. So, which means that in order to be a good tester, you need to develop into a weird human being, and that can be painful. So, but you need to force yourself to really do that. Good. So, testing. This is the usual thing. What people do. Testing is the art of finding out what software can do. So, you're in the information delivery business as a tester, and you want to know, okay, what does the software do? Does it make sense? Now, this is usually what is done in test cases. So you have a specification, the application should do A, then you write the test case, test that application does A, if yes, then passed, if not, then failed. Now the more interesting part, and that's where testing becomes, so this is easy. This everyone from the street, every person can do that. So if you give them instructions, if they can read, that's already enough. They can actually test that. They can see, okay, yes, that's there. But that's the hard part, and where it fails to do what it claims. So find areas where software no longer does that, what it should be doing, but does something weird, and then find out what that could be. Good. So as I already mentioned, I'm a consultant. We consultants, we work with Venn diagrams, because Venn diagrams, they make you look smart. So you can test that if you're in a meeting. Just stand up, go to the whiteboard, and just draw a Venn diagram, and you will have everyone's attention. So that, because they will think now something really smart comes. So what I thought, this is not good enough for me. So I did something really advanced, and that took me years of practice. See, I have a three-dimensional, kind of a three-element Venn diagram. Okay, so now back to serious. This really reflects something which is quite important in testing. So there are kind of three areas in testing. Usually what people believe is that there is a specification, and then there's implementation, and they ideally should match, and that's what happens. Now if you look here, there is here the part that is described. So this could be a requirements document. It could be any sort of document that is. And then there is, on the right, there is what's implemented by the developers, and on the south side, there is the part that is desired. This is what people wish for. Now, people are not really good at telling all their wishes. They can say when something is not good, but people are really, really bad at telling what they actually want. But they can say, no, that's not what I want. So that makes this circle very difficult, because it's an infinite area. So there is a lot of desire in software. I give you one which you have never thought of. If you test software, one thing you do not want with your software is that it makes your house explode. Right? Am I right? But this is not something that you would come up explicitly. You wouldn't bring this up. But of course, that is something that you desire for. Your application should not melt down your computer. It shouldn't do that. So, but this is not something that is explicitly stated, but implicitly wished for. Now, this is an extreme example, but usually what you find through exploratory testing are these kind of cases that no one thought of. And then, as soon as they're violated, you will find, okay, this was actually a wish that I had. Now, the overlapping areas are, of course, very interesting. So if you have a description, so what's not matching with implementation and desire are all the errors that the people wrote in the specification. Now, the described and implemented is something was in the specification, it was also implemented, but users really did not like it. So this is an interesting area. Then you have described and desired, but not implemented. That's when developers were drinking too long the night before and kind of skipped a couple of things. Then there is a lot of desired and implemented, but not described. So I don't think I've ever seen a specification that explicitly mentioned there shouldn't be a exception bubbling up on the user interface. So I don't think that's ever in a specification, but this is definitely a desired functionality, unless you have an exception demonstration software, then it's of course desired. I come to the core now of what context-driven is, which means that there is no universal rule for anything. There isn't anything that is always valid. What happens here is that usually if you have specification, you write test cases from it. This is not testing itself. Test cases is an artifact form for it, and it's extremely incomplete. So you need to keep that in mind. Good, now we come to context-driven. So context-driven is a cult and a religion. So we have our followers. And of course we have like the 10 commandments, we have the 7 context-driven principles. Now what's sad about all these principles is that they're, in my opinion, no longer that good. So there's a little bit of redundancy in it. I'm still going to present them what they means. Some of them are so obvious that it's weird that someone had to write them down. So context-driven was developed by people like Kem Kainer, James Bach, Michael Bolton. They came up with that. Brett Pettichord was part of that group as well, has left that community and is now doing something else. Good. So here we go. Who applies best practices in their daily work? Come on, don't be shy. All right, so certainly a couple also that didn't put up their hands. So you have best practices. But any practice depends on its context. It really depends on where you are and what you're doing, whether or not what you're doing makes sense or not. So this is kind of the first principle. So, and then it comes to the next. There are good practices in context, but there are no best practices. Now, if you have been in my Kyiv presentation yesterday, you might have noticed that there is a best practice somewhere. So now I'm contradicting myself. But again, this is psychology and human nature. We are not perfect machines, so we contradict ourselves completely, and that's perfectly fine, so nothing to worry about. What this means is that best practices that are often sold by consultancy companies and tool vendors are usually snake oil. They just want to lull you into believing, okay, whatever problem you have, this will solve your problems. I'll give you an example. HP Quality Center is one of these. I think that, yeah, HP Quality Center is in place because it's crazy expensive. And C-level people, they play golf together. And then they talk to each other, and so what are you using? Yeah, of course I'm using HP because it's best practice software and it's bloody expensive. Then the other one thinks, okay, if I get the same software, at least I don't have a competitive disadvantage. And then they put in hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then there's this sunk cost fallacy that kicks in, and no one can admit that this is crapware and should be replaced by something else. So that's why HP is still in place. Good, good. So, no best practices. Okay, now this is interesting. Circular best practice not to use best. Well, then I refer you to the Kyiv model, where there is the obvious area of sense making, which is so confined and put in context where best practices make sense. So there is even an exception to that. There you go. But again, this was not a very good argument, I admit. 3 people working together are the most important part of any project's context. So this is absolutely true. So one of the inherent elements of software and testing is that we're in a human technological machine. So it's kind of we're in a very interesting area where biology and technology mix each other. So people working together is very important. I think the agile people have also acknowledged that it's very important that you get along with each other. If you don't get along, if you hate someone, you probably won't do them a favor or work well together. So that's also something. Then projects unfold over time in ways that are often not predictable. This really drives me crazy because there are so many projects that I also encounter in different companies where they have these 5-year plans. Now, what 5-year plan? The people of you have been around before 1991. What does that sound like? So it's kind of, they have 5-year plans, which is that's planned economy. That's a weird thing. And how can you make a plan for 5 years with something where the largest part of its development is completely unknown? So you have no idea what's going to happen. It's not a machine. So in testing, what we have taken as a model is the one from manufacturing. Often we take models from previous activities, and manufacturing has been around for a while. Or building houses. We have done for a couple thousand years. We have developed software for maybe 50 years. We actually have no clue how it works. So even for testing, so if someone ever tells you, I figured out how testing works, that simply can't be. Humanity has not enough experience in that. It's something completely new. So we are these toddlers that walk first for the first time and then fall over all the time. So we still have a lot to figure out. Good, the product is solution. If the problem isn't solved, the product doesn't work. Who has ever countered this argument that you have found a bug, and then there was a question, okay, what requirement does it violate? And you said, well, I can't find one. It just isn't good because the house just exploded. And then people argued, well, if it's not in the specification, then it is by definition not a bug. So this is, it needs a very specific zombie mindset in order to argue that way. This is really fascinating. Good, then good software testing is a challenging intellectual process, right? Who has ever been in a situation where someone said, well, this developer is not really good enough, but would be good enough for testing? See, yes, me too. I've been in that situation where people argued that way. Now, isn't that crazy? So that you have a person who is not really good and wants to do software development. Now, you don't only let them do that, but you push them somewhere else where they don't feel at home, they don't like testing. So you have a crappy person who hates his job. How can that ever work? So this is really, it's mind-boggling to me. Good, this is a bit too long to read, but it kind of says the same things all over again. And these are the context-driven principles. There we go. Now, to me, much more interesting is the whole community around context-driven testing. So, who has heard of James Bach? All right. Who has heard of exploratory testing? Probably everyone. Who has worked with heuristics? Just a presentation before, I've seen a slide with heuristics. So heuristics, all that. So these are all things that come from the context-driven community of testers. What it is a very vibrant group of people who interact with each other a lot, specifically on Twitter. There are Slack rooms. If you want to know some, I can give you a lot of links. So if you give me your business card, I send you a link list of activities. There is Ministry of Testing, which is not strictly context-driven, but they are kind of friends of ours, so we want to include them because they do a tremendously good job in providing testing material. So that also means that if you want to get really good at testing, then get into a network of testers immediately. So there are a lot of groups that exchange thoughts. You're actually doing it because you're here at the conference. I guess you had discussions with other people here. And this is how you learn fastest. So if you can tap into a network of people that will help you to become better, then that's a really good thing. So this is just a screenshot of Testers.io. This is after one day not being there, so it's completely filled with stuff. There are about 3,000 people in there, which also means that if you have a problem that you don't know how to proceed, if you ask the question there's a high likelihood that you will get an answer or some reference or some tip immediately. So it's really helpful. Now, you can a little bit hear that it's kind of, I leave context-driven testing, go more into, okay, how does it help to be a really passionate tester and being really good? Reason for that is context-driven testers in the community, they usually disagree with each other on almost everything. So it's not a homogeneous group. Of course, we have our 10 commandments that we say each morning when we wake up. But no, we don't. But usually we don't agree with stuff, so that's quite important. There are professional associations, so that's one of them. No specific interests in that. No, of course, Association for Software Testing is an explicitly context-driven testing association that wants to propagate good testing in general. Then, of course, meetups, meetup.com. I'm sure there are very good meetups. They cost nothing. Usually a company even offers beer or drinks, which is a very nice thing, and you get to know people you can exchange with. So, let's see. Then automation. So, quite interestingly, there is the view in general that we have manual testing and automated testing. Do you have that? Okay. So, who in here is a software developer? You. Oh, okay. So let me come to you. Good. So you're a software developer, right? So you develop software? Yes. Okay. So are you a manual software developer or are you an automated software developer? Yes, you are a manual software developer because I see your hands. You type code with your hands. So you're one of these cheap manual testers that can't really do work. Why don't you automate your job? I mean, you should do automation because automation is the advanced stuff. So I don't see why you should do any manual software development. That doesn't make sense to me. You should do automate. Okay, so you see my point. There is automated software development. It's just called differently. It's called compiling. So, kind of developers were smart. They had a different name for it. Now, my point here is that this distinction, this binary or this dichotomous distinction between activities is absolutely, whatever. Use your Ukrainian swear word of your choice. It doesn't make sense. We humans have this strange attraction for putting things into categories of either this or something else. There's big and small, there's light and dark, and we always have these positions on two ends, and it simply doesn't make sense. And of course, manual testing has this impression as if you were just a stupid person who can only work with your hands, and it's kind of, there's a little bit of sand here, and you just put it over there. And so if you're smart, then you automate the whole thing. So it doesn't really make sense. It's what I find more interesting are gradual categorization systems, ones that are not binary. And what I would see as an interesting view is how much human interaction do you have while testing. So I think this is more interesting because that also includes the use of automation while you do exploratory testing. Why shouldn't that be possible? It's not a binary category where you just put something into one or the other. Doesn't make sense. Good. Or how another way to categorize it's also an area of checking and experimentation. So checking means something that's very important in testing. You have a set of explicit knowledge items about how the software should behave. You know exactly that if you enter a name into a name field and you click on send, then it should be written into a database. This is something you can check. It's an explicit knowledge you can check. That's usually the area which can be automated. So anything that you can put into algorithms needs to have a clear expectation for its outcome. Whereas experimentations are things where you hope to discover new knowledge, something that you haven't known before. Now, when you observe the result, then you as human can take care of it and see whether or not this is something you wish for or not. Okay, let's not automate here, but have a little critical thinking exercise. So how many holes are there in this t-shirt? 5, 6, 7, 8. Can you say what did you? Now, here we have a real tester. So you're all kind of just shouting in there for answers. So you don't even know what I asked for. You're the real tester because okay, what does it mean to be a whole? Whereas the others just shouted 3, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which means that you were no longer compulsive empiricists and you no longer gathered data. You were not scientific. Now this is a usual thing because that's what a human would of course say there are 2 holes there. Or maybe you could argue for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or you could argue for 8. There is a lot of argument as a human being, you do that. You're not a human being, you're a tester. So, no, of course you're a human being as well. But so as a tester, first of all, it's kind of, okay, there must be some trick, something must be wrong. I don't believe that this is just a t-shirt. First of all, this is not a t-shirt, this is a picture of a t-shirt. But whenever, so Now, whenever someone argues like that, just tell them they're a pedantic idiot and should move on, because that's just, yeah, you shouldn't do that. Of course, that's a T-shirt, and everyone knows that this is it's a projection of a picture of a T-shirt, and we know that it's not something that we need to explicitly say. Now, but your question is, what is a whole? Now, there it becomes interesting because, again, there is not just one answer to that question. So you could say, okay, wholes. We don't regard kind of the regular ones as wholes. They are just, you know, they're what makes a T-shirt, and the two things there are holes, and maybe there's 2 or 4. We could also say, okay, between the fabric there could be holes. And so there could be millions of holes in there. So it really depends on how you ask the question, and you will come up with a different answer. Good. So, by the way, this is a good hiring exercise you can do with people, and just but give them a little bit of leeway and tell them, give me as many answers as possible, as many different answers as possible, and then see how they do. Usually, very creative people will come up with a lot of answers. Quite interesting. So again, that's the thing. We have the technoid over there, and we have the humans in the rest, and that's what combines software testing. So there is a lot of psychological components that play into that. So let's switch over that, technical. So, I mean, what does technical mean? It just means being proficient in a specific area of expertise. That means technical. Technical doesn't necessarily mean that you're a software developer, although being a software developer helps in being a good tester. But you can be one without that. Now, what you should definitely understand is that more automation is not automatically better. So we often believe that more is more, and more is cool. So if we have a lot of automation, that helps a lot. Whereby a lot of people then forget that creating test automation is a software engineering project itself. Now, software has bugs in it, so which means that your test code will have bugs in it. By definition, there is no way that there is no bugs. Now, of course, now you could have a meta test automation that checks your automation, and then a meta one, and then it becomes weird because then we have this kind of this world where there's turtles, and then there's turtles all the way down. They stand on each other, so it doesn't make sense. So for automation, really ask yourself, okay, what is necessary to do in terms of automation, especially your regression test suite is tricky. We had yesterday the little table, like the expert talk up there, and we had this discussion on semantics and what things mean. And one thing that I brought as an example was end-to-end testing. So, do you do end-to-end testing? Okay. Now, what does it mean? So now I could ask everyone who said yes, and you would probably discover that there is as many descriptions of what end-to-end testing is as there are people saying, yes, we do that. So end-to-end testing is one of these fuzzy things where you don't exactly know what it means. It could mean anything. So there is often people that talk, so shall we do end-to-end testing? And the other one says, yes, we shall do that. I will go and implement it. And the other one says, yes. And both walk away and they think, okay, they agree now. Except that they have different mental models in their head, and kind of so the implementation will be not according to the expectation of the other person. So, as a good tester, sometimes it makes sense to have a semantic discussion on, okay, what do you actually mean? So, who has ever heard the thing? Well, that's only semantics. Let's move on. Now, yeah, you have heard that. So now, semantics is the art of being understood. So, if you care to be understood, then semantics is an important area. So it makes sense to sometimes have these kind of discussions. Just don't overdo it. We had that before. Automation is not a better version of testing. It is testing. It belongs into part of testing. And the even more important part is that sense-making is human property. This is really important. With all the talks about artificial intelligence and machine learning, sense-making still is a human property. So machine learning, have you heard that? Yeah, machine learning is actually not learning, it's algorithm refinement. So I think that's a better description of it. Because learning, to me, is a human property, something that humans do. I'm not sure if a machine really learns, because a machine doesn't give a shit. We do. So therefore, it can't follow in a good path. So sense-making is still something that only you can do. Say your regression suite is all tests are failing in the morning. You come in, your regression suite, all tests are red. So you will not call the firemen and kind of evacuate the building. Your first assumption will be probably was the test environment was down, and most likely that's right. A machine can't give you that answer. You still need to do that. Good. Who works in a test center of excellence? Cool, no one, yeah. So because usually test centers of excellence are silos that are in a different building, and just the reason that they have to call themselves something of excellence makes me very suspicious. If you have to call yourself excellent, then something is fishy. Usually they also don't get along with developers, but they're in a fight. So I think developers and testers are one family, and they should really get along with each other and work together and not work against each other. Now, of course, your job as a tester is often to tell the developer that his or her baby is ugly. That's a delicate message to transport. It's not easy to tell someone that their baby is ugly. So you have to be very delicate and apply some humor. Good. This is what tool vendors would like to let you believe, that tools will just solve all your problems, but that's of course not the case. How can tools solve your problems? Humans solve problems, not tools. Tools help you. Good. Agile testing. Who is an agile tester in here? Agile tester? Okay. Yeah. So in context-driven terms, this just means that agile is a context you find yourself in. It's a constellation and a structure of how people work together, and that's where you find yourself. So agile testing doesn't really make sense because it's not you're adapting to a situation. It's not that you're doing agile testing. So that's maybe something to discuss. So I'm not claiming truth here. Yes, I'll leave this. Now that's a beautiful one. So quick and easy. If someone sells you something, okay, it's just very easy and simple. We have this tool that will set up automatically your regression suite, and just by click of the button, and no software engineering needed. That's probably a lie, and someone just wants to bullshit you. So take care of that. Oh, sorry. Should have muted that. Good. In the presentation before, I saw the last slide had a lot of references, which was an invitation for you to read. I would like to enforce that as well, so read a lot about testing. These are just a couple of books that I find pretty good and helpful for that. So one might strike you as weird, which is The Structure of Magic. This sounds like a very esoteric thing, like, yeah. So there is incense sticks and stuff like that. It's not about that. This is about meaning and about language and how to transport something and be really accurate. Then, of course, what I would like to invite you is to always use your own judgment. So what I tell you here shouldn't be too much of a relevance to you. It's your own thinking and your reasoning that you need to apply in order to come up with good testing. So I'm not that important for that. Anytime someone stands in front of a crowd, that doesn't mean that they know things better. Often that just means that they like their own sound of their voice, and so it's as simple as that. Here's something. If you people sometimes ask me what is a good alternative to ISTQB courses, and I usually recommend that one. BBSD courses are online courses that have a duration of 4 weeks. Each week is about 15 to 25 hours of work, and it's highly interactive with other testers, and it is applying your skills. It's not just memorizing some terms. So BBSD courses, I can help that a lot. So to the gentleman in front, I promise to give an anarchy reference, because he's got a QA, but that looks like the anarchy symbol T-shirt on. There is a very nice book which is called Against the Method by Feyerabend, and it is about epistemological anarchy, which means that in terms of your own skill acquisition, you shouldn't follow any authority. You should be anarchic in your mindset while learning something. Just follow your own thing and don't have other people tell you how you should learn. So another book that I can recommend that goes into something in a similar direction is Buccaneer Scholar by James Bach. who talks about his self-education. This is more about the scientific method and how it's not so pure as people want to make you to believe, but people usually discover new scientific theories by getting incredibly drunk and mixing things and getting confused. So that's how it really works. It's not the usual hypothesis, testing, theory, and then it becomes solidified. That's not how it works. Cool. Good. A little story to the end. How much time do we have? No, 5 minutes. Okay, I will skip the story. Let's go a little bit into question. No? Do you want to hear the story? Okay, Jesse, Alfred was a guy from Colorado. He dropped out of school because he didn't behave, so he couldn't get a degree. But what happened was that he was incredibly smart, so he was a very smart guy. Used to work in a help desk and suddenly thought, testing is an interesting area, let's explore what's happening there. And so he was in a BBSD course together with me, and it struck me that this person, it's weird, how does a person who has no idea about testing go into a course about testing? And so he said he was just interested if that is an area that could be something for him. And so he did that course, was really smart, and then the community helped him to find a job. So he just developed himself further and further. Today he's a senior technical software developer at Pivotal Labs in California. So he's the guy everyone goes to if they have a tricky technical question. He started from nothing and acquired everything, not through university, but by just being interested and curious, and has a very well-paid job today. So he just kind of made himself go into one direction, self-driven, not by some university lecture schedule, but just self-driven. And I would like to invite you to also follow that path. So good luck on your journey, and let's have a couple of questions and discussions. Thank you.
You said there's slide about that test case is not testing.
Yes.
But campaigner argued versus this. Mean there is no any confusion or any disagreement between those two actions, because when you're doing some checking step by step, it's a testing as well, because you're doing exploring based on your knowledge already. Do you agree with that, or you still on the back position that testing? But do you have any extension to this slide on your point?
Yes, I make a point there. So checking and experimentation together make testing. So it's anything explicit and anything that this helps you discover the implicit together is testing. So I stand with my opinion that test case is not testing. If Cam Kainer has a different opinion, that's fine. He is a grown-up man. He can have his own opinion. So am I. So to me, the test case is an artifact. It's not the activity. So a user manual of a car is not a car. So it's not the activity. A user manual of how to do high jumping is not high jumping. Testing is an activity. Test case is an artifact. There you go. Okay?
Any more questions? Oh. Hi.
Hi.
You said that BBST is a good alternative to ISTQB. Does it mean that you don't recommend ISTQB, or what's the difference between these two approaches? Well, it's new for me, was BBST.
Okay. So the thing there is, this question is a kind of a Pavlovian trigger in me, which would make me ramble for the next 2 hours. But I can let's just approach me afterwards, and I'll tell you. But basically, one is cool, and the other one is crap. And I guess which one. But it's and I can argue for it, but I don't want to, because yeah, it's Pavlovian. It's kind of all coming out of my mouth now. Yeah. Yes, back there.
Yeah, hi, my name is Nikita. Thank you very much for a very interesting talk. My question is not related to your topic, but as a part of a community, it's
yes.
interesting. Do you think the software testing, developing all the time, is it anything new during the last 20 or 30 years? What is your opinion?
What the question was, if there was anything new.
New in software testing.
Well, it's. I think the one new element is a rising of acceptance of that this is a serious job and it's not something for stupid people. I think that's one thing that certainly developed in the last 20 years. Certainly on the technological side, the activities in automation and the use of tools is far more refined today, and people came away from going through GUI elements in automation. So this is certainly one area. It is the more widespread understanding of heuristics is certainly one area that has been developed. Now, interesting, what I can recommend you, go to Ngram Viewer on Google and just look for software testing and see the references of books. And then have a look in books about testing in the 60s. It's the same thing, that they already said, well, take care that you shouldn't do this and this and this, and we still do it. So in a way, yes, there was development, but in a way, we're still infants. We still have a lot to learn. And I have very strong opinions, but I'm very careful towards myself to think that I have understood software testing. I haven't. One reason is that I'm a manager, so I have no clue anyway. So.
One second.
There's one here, yeah.
Hey, my name is Dimitri, Tacit Knowledge Moldova. I have a question for you. So, as a software tester, don't you ever struggle that you don't creating like artifacts useful for people?
That's why I brew beer. That's actually it's seriously one of the reasons. It's and I do gardening. It is yes, I struggle with that. I mean, it satisfies my brain, but it doesn't satisfy my body. And of course, these are just intertwined. And yes, I do struggle with that. That I don't produce anything. It's just nothing that I do. So I try to do this in other areas. Yeah, but it is to me it is a problem. So a lot of the handiwork activities I do exactly because I don't have that in my day job. But now I'm fine. I have beer to drink, and so that always helps. Yeah, good.
Okay, thank you. We're run out of time.
All right, thank you very much,
once again.
and have a good rest of the conference.